For more on the big series up at the Roadhouse this past week, with Alabama taking 2 out of 3 from Texas, we bring in someone that has covered this team this year and was in the Roadhouse for this record-breaking weekend of attendance at the Roadhouse, which is saying something, folks, when they're making big-time attendance, but that's what happened there. She covers the Alabama Crimson Tide, not just in softball, but other sports as well. There for the Tuscaloosa News, I speak of Amelia Hurley joining us here. Boy, that was a fun atmosphere. Just first of all, describe the 3 days from an atmosphere standpoint at the Roadhouse.
It was really incredible to be able to see. Going in on Thursday, it was such a packed crowd. You couldn't really think it could get bigger. And then it got bigger and it got bigger again. And they kept breaking their record each day this series for biggest attendance. And people in Tuscaloosa, they love some Alabama softball. They love Road Stadium. It's really an incredible environment and it really gets the crowd into the game. So it's been really interesting to be able to watch from the press box up above.
I bet it was electric atmosphere. It looked like that on television watching all week. You've got some content up there, especially takeaways. What's your biggest takeaway from this Alabama series win over number one and defending national champion Texas?
I think Alabama proved that they could play with the best of them. You're defeating the number one champion. It is the first time that that's happening since you defeated number one Washington back in 2020. So this is a really big series for the Crimson Tide. And I think that they've shown that they can do this in other points in the season too. You've had some other top 10 wins with Florida State and then Arkansas as well. So being able to show that you can do that on the road at home over the number one team in the country, what more can you ask for?
Thing that stood out to me is they obviously things didn't go well in the first game. Texas had their way with them and Jocelyn Brisky and company, but they responded in game two and then obviously in game three. What changed between game one and then two and three as you talk to Coach Murph and the players?
Changes happened on both sides of the ball. You got in the circle. Some pitching didn't go exactly to plan. You're letting up 9 runs to have that 9-1 blowout on Thursday night. That is not how you want to open a series. But to be able to limit Texas to just 4 runs on Friday and Saturday, that was a complete turnaround. You saw freshman Vic Moten absolutely pull it together and have an incredible weekend. She was looking for her first SEC series win after losing to Missouri and Arkansas, and being able to come back and then absolutely take the lead into the 2 wins against the number one team in the country. That is a heck of a resume for a freshman. So then you got on offense, I think something that Pat Murphy had told us after the first game was, pitching can be what it is, but we have to have the offense to back it up. And when you score just 1 run on Thursday night, that's not the Alabama that Crimson Tide fans have been used to seeing. You've been used to seeing them dominate in these high-scoring run rule games all season, and even be able to do that against those tougher opponents. So being able to absolutely respond with 11 runs on Friday and then also have 7 today, it was, they showed that they could balance both discipline at the plate, but then also still being aggressive. So you're getting those walks as well to get you those easy passes.
You mentioned Vic Moten. She's been fantastic as a freshman this year. And, of course, Jocelyn Brisky. Talk about this pitching staff because people wondered. Texas tested him. But certainly I saw where Coach Murphy even said that they should have a lot of confidence leaving this series. You've covered them all year. What's your been thoughts on Vic Moten and Jocelyn Brisky?
Jocelyn Brisky, this was the first weekend that we have really seen all season where she's had an off day. She has proven that she is one of the best pitchers in the country throughout this season so far. And she's had, a great comeback from last year and also battling injury in the off season. And I know Murphy had mentioned that she's going through some things right now, so we can attribute that to what you will. But Vic Moten has surely stepped in her place. And Vic has had her struggles. She's a freshman. This is her first time on a collegiate stage, let alone in a top 5 team. And then also being able to hold yourself together and truly bounce back and do what she did in this, number one series. That is a lot to ask of a freshman. And she truly did step up to the plate.
You mentioned the offense. That's been a game changer for them this season. Big time numbers there offensively. I know it's just your first year covering them, but just in talking to the coaches and the players, What has been the biggest difference for this offense of explosion that they've had this season? I know Caleb Bro has helped them on the staff as a former Alabama Crimson Tide great, but what has been the difference for this offense?
I think that this lineup, you just can't really go wrong. 1 through 9, if you want a home run, you can ask anyone and they can deliver at any point. And Alexis Papillo is, I mean, just an incredible hitter, and she has 12 home runs on the year so far, 43 RBIs, 37 runs off 49 hits. I mean, she is just explosive, not just with her power, but also with her speed. She's incredibly fast. And she's had some really key moments, even in the Texas series, being able to multiple times also contain that power and be disciplined at the plate and know when to take those walks, especially with the bases loaded, as we saw a few times, to be able to get those other runs on the board for us. So, she's able to kind of control that. You have other batters that aren't, no one's selfish on this board. You see Salem Hawkins able to sacrifice whenever's needed, and she's extremely quick. She is powerful. She can kind of, do whatever you need in there. And then you have other really powerful batters with Brooke Wells, Anna Roman, another freshman, and Ambry Taylor, who's a freshman who wasn't even originally in the lineup this year and is already producing consistently. So you really can't go wrong throughout this lineup and asking for that.
I'm glad you brought up Brooke Wells. I've covered her since she started her career at Houston, came over to Alabama. Talk about what she has provided to this team. It feels to me that she's brought this big power in the middle of the lineup to balance out this line. Is that accurate?
Oh, 100%. I think that Brooke really has taken the charge in the reliability sense. You can always ensure that if you need a big score, if you need someone to come in and really give you that power, Brooke is going to be there for that. She's also just very smart. You can tell that she has that good plate discipline and knows when to swing. She's rarely going to get struck out. So it's really good to have her in that lineup as one of those key figures that you lean on.
I think you spoke to her, or at least you were part of the media that spoke to her this week about she's an Austin native, a Texas there. Was this a big deal playing Texas for her? Did she downplay it?
I think that it was probably a big deal for everyone, it just being the number one team in the country, but I'm sure that it has a special place in her heart as well. I know that her mom was there, I actually spoke with her mom after the game, and they were all so proud of her and of the team as a whole. Her brother is a Tulane baseball commit, I believe, and so that's a whole stick and ball family. So I'm sure that they were all really excited for her.
Believe it, and she's been magnificent there. I want to ask you about Coach Murphy. Now you've dealt with him on a daily basis. What was he like after this game, winning this series? He talked about how this was a big series, the atmosphere, Texas, and everything. You've dealt with him the whole year. What was he like after this win when he won the series?
It was a heck of a series to be able to come off and brag on, but you didn't really see him brag as much. I think this is more of the expectation for this Alabama softball team. They want to know that they can come in, bounce back no matter who the opponent is, whether it's the number one team in the country or someone else. And this shouldn't be any different. I think he expects this of his players, and I think he expects this of them throughout the postseason as well. So this is definitely something to see if it can be consistent.
He told me before the season he felt this roster is special, the most talented team, the most green lights. I'm sure you've heard the term he's used, green lights for his players there. Just talk about the vibe being around this program. Did you get a sense that everybody felt this could be, wow, we could be really good this season and kind of looked at it from that angle before going into the season, that they had big goals and they felt they could accomplish it?
I definitely think that's been the vibe even since fall ball. That's when I started covering the team was in fall ball. And I remember even back then, Pat Murphy was talking about resemblances to the 2012 championship team. And, it really takes actual, more of like a series and getting into the actual season. You can't really determine that from fall ball per se. But once you get into the spring, you get deeper into SEC, which is just so stacked full of talent right now. And you see that even against some of the toughest teams that you're able to hold your own. And yeah, you might have a tough game here and there. You might have a loss you didn't expect here, but you're able to bounce back and you're able to get the wins where it needs. So I think he's pretty confident with that.
It was good timing the first fall there. Do you remember what's it been like? What's it like dealing with Coach Murph on a weekly basis?
He's great. He's super welcoming. When I first came here, he sat with me and got to tell me a little bit about the program, make sure I felt welcome. That's not something you really see a lot of coaches do in this industry. So I really appreciated him taking the time to be personable with me like that. But he's a really great coach. You can see it definitely on the field as well in the way that all of the women on this Alabama softball team truly rally for him. I think that everyone's dynamic is extremely close-knit on this team, even players as well. I did a column sitting with the dads a few weeks ago of the Alabama softball girls and got to really talk to them about what the dynamic was within the team. And it just seems like everyone is a family and more so than any other team that I've covered from any sport.
It's pretty good here. Now it's going to be interesting. They have this big series win. They've got a midweek with South Alabama at home, and then they go on the road back in SEC with Auburn. I know it's your first year in the beat, but I think you know pretty well that's a pretty good rivalry between those two institutions there. To go up to Auburn there, they've got Kentucky at home coming up in a couple of weeks on the schedule, and a big one at Tennessee later in the season. What are some of the questions you still may have about this team moving forward here in SEC play?
I want to see if they can hold their own on the road. We had that unexpected loss against Missouri. The other loss, you have at Arkansas at home, and then obviously the Texas loss at home. You want to see if they're able to match with these tougher opponents on the road and stay consistent. You saw that with top 10 Florida State earlier in the season, but you got to make sure that that can be something you consistently can do throughout the postseason. And so I think that having Texas at Rhodes was a really good test, and it also gave them the ability to rely on that fandom to really root for them and rally for them. But you got to see if they can do that. And it is going to be a big deal to be at Auburn and be able to do that this upcoming weekend. So that's what I'm looking to see.
And how they handle the prosperity. Everybody's going to be ranking them high. Everybody's going to be talking about just giving them paddles on the back. I'll be curious how they handle that, especially when they go into Auburn in the road territory, as you know, in the SEC is very well. It could be very difficult. So you're right. I agree 100%. I think the road, how they play on the road will tell the story on that. Not a bad year to join the beat, right? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into covering Alabama here for the Tuscaloosa News.
Yeah, no, this is the perfect season to join. I actually graduated from the University of Missouri last May. I got my master's degree there, and before that, I covered Mizzou football for the Columbia Missourian. Now I am at the Tuscaloosa News. I cover Alabama softball and high school sports, and then also contribute to our Alabama football coverage and other University of Alabama athletics. And I'm loving being on this beat. I'm loving being able to tell some in-depth stories. I did a feature on Salem Hawkins about a month ago that was truly one of my favorite stories I've ever written. I think that there's so many incredible stories of how these women have really gotten to this program and how this program is as successful and tight-knit as it is. And so I've really enjoyed and relished the opportunity to be able to cover that.
Tell the audience where they can find your work. Great work you're doing, especially with Alabama coverage here in softball and all together. Where can people find you?
Thank you. So you can find me on Twitter at Amelia Hurley _, or you can find my work at Amelia Hurley at the Tuscaloosa News.
Should be a lot of fun, Amelia. I think you're going to have a lot of fun here in the next month or two with this covering this team. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time from a busy schedule as you're recapping one of the biggest series in college softball this season. Thanks for doing this for us, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Thanks for having me, Eric.